Hi, this is Natalie Lander, voice of Kinsey, Tara Branford, Stargirl, and many others. You are listening to a W2Mnet podcast. You can visit W2Mnet.com for other podcasts about entertainment, video games, sports, and wrestling. You are listening to Video Games to the Max.
Hello and welcome to another Best of the Decade Video Games to the Max style, as we are now into 2012. Hopefully you listened to 2010, 2011, but if not, we'll explain how this works a little bit. I am your host, Sean Garmer, and here with me, Mr. Marc Morrison.
Howdy.
And joining us yet again, Randy Isbelle. Well,
pause for dramatic effect.
And also here with us, Mr. Jens Dietrich.
Greetings.
I guess Randy is indisposed at the moment. He'll be back at some point here. So, just in case this is the first one you're listening to, this is what we did to figure out how we get to the best of 2012. We had the four of us that are here, Daniel Anderson and Angel Gonzalez, all vote, bring their top 10s. We have put them all in a spreadsheet with the number 1 being 10 points and number 10 being 1 point. And it all came down to getting a top 15 out of that. And that's what we're doing here. We're taking that top 15 that I'm going to give you in just a few seconds and whittling that down to 10. And then we'll take those 10, seeing it as the best of that year and seeing how many of those will eventually be put into a top 100 of the decade that we'll do after we get done with all these yearly things. So, without further ado, here is our top 15 for 2012, which, my goodness, it's so crazy that we have so many ties that I'm about to have to go through here. So, our number 1 for right now, the Telltale Walking Dead Season 1. Journey is actually tied for first at number 2. Persona 4 Golden is also tied for second with XCOM Enemy Unknown. Then you get Far Cry 3 at number 5. Number 6 is Spec Ops: The Line. Then number 7, for some reason, is Diablo 3, the vanilla version. Hotline Miami is number 8. FTL Faster Than Light is also tied for number 8. Borderlands 2 at 10. Xenoblade Chronicles 11. Sleeping Dogs is 12. Mass Effect 3 is at 13. Forza Horizon, the first one, is tied with Mass Effect 3 for 13. And then Halo 4, Azura's Wrath, and Fez are all tied for 15. And just after that is Binary Domain and Assassin's Creed 3 and Dust Elysian Tale. So, I'm not going to argue for any of those missing out ones at all.
Binary Domain does not deserve to be lumped in with Assassin's Creed 3.
I don't even know why Assassin's Creed 3 is here.
You're crazy. Binary Domain is an underrated masterpiece.
It a masterpiece, but I liked it. And I remember Assassin's Creed 3 being bad.
Yes, actively bad.
I loved this Elysian Tale. I wish I had more love, but sadly.
I haven't played it, but I've heard from people I trust that it's great.
It's an underrated indie gem. So, I don't really care about breaking the 15th tie. There is, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion for this year.
Well, if we get Randy back, I don't really care about most of these ties, to be honest.
Well, the only thing I would say is, like, I actually really like Forza Horizon 1. That's kind of about it on this, like...
Okay, I would say that Forza Horizon 1 also carries the massive like help of the arcade genre of like racing games was pretty much like dead at this point. Forza Horizon comes along when almost everything is switching over to simulation, because at this point you have Gran Turismo, which itself is kind of like, after 5 it starts, getting less and less relevant. Then Forza itself is kind of like that one standard bearer, along with whatever's left with Gran Turismo, and even the Dirt series starts going simulation based closely after this. So you have Forza Horizon comes along and goes, oh my god, they took everything that makes Forza great and they made it into an arcade racer. So, I think it does, stand the stand. If you look at it from an importance factor, it does carry that way. Not to mention being a really good game as well.
I agree that for all the games that are in the 11 through 17 of this list, I feel Forza is the one that probably deserves to move into the top 10 more than any of the others.
I mean, I know Jens probably likes it, and I like it to an extent. I was really for at school, but the DLC is like the fucked up part of that game. Like, they didn't release like an actual final version or like a complete version, so it gets knocked off.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's fucked up is that it's basically the true ending, right? So not only what normally you would have to unlock by beating the game at a certain difficulty, now you also have to purchase. So that stinks. But the game is so it's just it captures the anime aesthetic and the it has that like episodic structure of an anime. It always ends on a big cliffhanger. It looks amazing. The story is actually very emotional. I really love Asura's Wrath, and I thought it played great too. I mean, I realized that it is like 80% QuickTime events, but the parts of it when it actually turns into a third-person action game and puts you in a boss fight, I think are also pretty darn good. So I really like it, but I also recognize that it's not going to make the top 10, so whatever.
Yeah. So I would cut, from the top list, I would cut Diablo 3. That can take a hike.
Yeah, Diablo 3 vanilla, I think
Terrible.
Well, I think Randy was arguing for it off the air that he was a big fan, or
I don't think it's that he's a big fan. You got to remember, Randy is not a fan of expansions being included in Game of the Year lists or whatever. So his point was, this is when Diablo 3 originally came out, so we shouldn't be able to count it later in 2014 when Reaper of Souls is obviously the better game, and it actually comes out on consoles. But, because Randy included it, and Daniel, I think, was the one that gave it the higher number, because I'm thinking he's not really thinking about,
I think Randy's back on. Randy, do you want to?
Yeah, he's making my point for me. It's the way I look at it, and what he was saying on an earlier one, is we're looking at how it was played now, and not on shitty systems on PS3 and stuff. So the way I always look at these kind of things is Diablo 3, yes, came out in 2012. They made it better in 2014. Reaper of Souls is great. And that is the version that I played. But the way I look at it, it came out in 2012. And my argument to Mark, as I was going to make before my computer crashed right as we were starting this podcast, is he has No Man's Sky on his list in 2016. That game
that's also crazy. Also crazy.
I like No Man's Sky in 2016. I haven't gone back to it since then.
Well,
it wasn't.
No,
great.
yeah, he did. He and Daniel both. I remember when we did which I don't think we even made an article for it, but I remember when we did the 2016 Games of the Year, both of them were arguing for it, and at that point, that's when No Man's Sky was not well received at all for some of the other issues it had, and both of them were vehemently arguing that they liked it. So.
Well,
yeah, but
nobody sane would have put Diablo 3 in the top 10.
Also, there hasn't been a No Man's Sky expansion pack that you can buy in a store.
Yeah, it's called
not in a store, but you can buy. Well, it's all free, right? All the updates they've done.
There's no package. Well, there's no package that's No Man's Sky Complete or No Man's Sky Reaper of Space Edition. It's just No Man's Sky. When you buy, you have to spend 2 days downloading crap for it. It's still free. You don't have to pay for it.
So are we putting every compilation on here that comes out, and here's the Game of the Year edition for this game?
No, but that's not the Game of the Year edition. Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls removes the auction house, which was one of the reasons why Diablo 3 was extremely maligned. Not to mention also improves it and adds story elements, which is what all expansions do.
What added adventure mode? Like,
so does DLC. That's what DLC does.
So, Randy, are you arguing for cutting Persona 4 Golden?
I was going to ask what the difference was. I don't play
Persona 4 Golden adds in a character that completely changes the... It's the same thing with Persona 5R. It adds in a character, adds in different things, and the character completely changes the game if you play as.
I mean, I guess I shouldn't have put Catherine Full Body on the 2019 list either.
Well, that's Randy. I was fine with it because it's also being put on by other people. So it's not like we're the only ones putting Persona 4 Golden or Diablo 3 Reaper Souls, or everybody else is also doing that. So if people that have way more reasons to be more strict than we do are doing it, it's also okay on my end. So, getting back to the point, Diablo 3 shouldn't have even been near the top 15, but it's there, so completely it should be axed. Yeah, I mean, here's the other problem. I think a lot of the stuff in the below 10 you're talking about really good games too, so
I wouldn't mind if Xenoblade Chronicles moved into the top 10, honestly.
Me too. I love Xenoblade Chronicles. There's a reason it's getting a remaster this year, because it's freaking awesome.
We should put it on this year's list.
We should, but what are we taking off? Well, yeah, I mean, we could move it into number 10 for now, while we figure out what we're going to do with the rest of it. I know Mark made the case when Randy wasn't on for Forza Horizon, which I agree with him on that aspect. Sleeping Dogs is also very underrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good game. It has some weird. It has some very weird, specific story problems near the end, but combat was always great, and driving was really fun in that game. Even following.
Yeah, Wes and I did that one for the Backlog Busing project, and we both really enjoyed that game.
Yeah.
How about this?
It's like GTA China.
We cut Diablo 3, we cut Borderlands 2, and we put Forza and Xenoblade kind of on the bottom two spots.
Oh, nobody wants to offend Borderlands 2?
It's fine. It's less offensive than Borderlands 3.
That is true.
But isn't it better than Borderlands 1?
No.
No.
Nah, Borderlands 2 Game Edition that come out a couple years later was better.
Borderlands 2, it has different environments, but they didn't really change much of anything. Except for adding a really stupid golden key system that they keep hammering on people.
Okay.
Also, I thought Handsome Jack was kind of a shitty character.
I like Handsome Jack. I thought he was a piece of shit, but that's what he's supposed to be. He's a freaking villain. You're supposed to hate him.
You'll like Borderlands 3 then quite a bit.
Oh, well, no. There's other reasons not to like Borderlands 3.
I'm more annoyed by some of the other characters in Borderlands 2. I think they introduced Ellie in that game, and I never had a problem. I don't have a problem with Tiny Tina, but definitely the writing in Borderlands 2 took a big nosedive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so we started a conversation off the air that I think we need to have on the air, because if you look at Game of the Year lists for that year, aside from the ending, a lot of people would classify Mass Effect 3 still as a great game, but just didn't like the ending or whatever. Why would you guys say you don't think it needs to be in the top 10?
That ruined Mass Effect 2.
How so?
Because they completely discount all the Mass Effect 2, all the characters. The entire point of Mass Effect 2 was getting this big grouped together, crew and doing cool shit, and they're all sidelined in Mass Effect 3. Like, there are dudes that just stand around and do nothing for the entire point of the game. Except for, like, the very end when they, like, say, oh, you have this guy? He'll fight. He's in a cinematic defending the hospital. And I was like, oh, okay. No.
There are a lot of unsatisfying things about the way that game wraps up its storylines, even before the controversial ending. And also, I just think they like tweaked the engine somewhat, and it ruined some of the custom. Like my custom character that I imported from Mass Effect 2, suddenly looked terrible. And they got rid of the film grain, so that's another strike against.
But that was in Mass Effect 2. They got rid of that.
No, Mass Effect 2 had it. You could turn it on.
You could turn it on, but it wasn't on by default. Like I don't think I ever did that actually.
But they didn't. They just straight up took it away for 3. So that's a big strike for me because I like the film grain.
Well, there you go. We're arguing about film grain.
Yeah.
Also, the ending's terrible. Let's face it.
Well, okay. So why, for somebody who didn't play, I've always tried. Of course, the problem is that Mass Effect 1 doesn't hold up well, and I've always tried to go back and play from the beginning, and
that's bad.
I get through halfway through Mass Effect 1, and I'm like, okay, I'm done, and I gotta move on to other stuff.
The Mako, okay.
I'm not defending the Mako, but I recognize that Mass Effect 1 is the roughest of the Mass Effects technically. Like, the shooting feels the worst. It's got an insane amount of Unreal Engine texture popping, and just generally issues with loading in assets. But it's still the strongest and most self-contained story in the series, and it's a great introduction into the world. The world building's fantastic.
Right.
The alien races, everything about the way it sets up the trilogy is just fantastic. And 2 is, let's take what Mass Effect 1 did and turn it into like a Dirty Dozen kind of mission story where we can really...
And it also turned it into more of an RPG, right? Because the first one was more of a shooter.
The first one's more of an RPG.
Yeah, the first one was the RPG one because you had like an inventory. The second one didn't have that at all, really.
Oh, okay.
Like Mass Effect 1 to me is like, it's basically like Alpha Protocol in how it plays. Like those two games are very similar in my mind.
Doing a disservice to Mass Effect 1 by that comparison.
No, but it's like that level of like shooter with a lot of RPG mechanics, like leveling and gear and stuff layered on top, and then Mass Effect 2.
But 2 had more of the story decisions and all that kind of stuff, right?
And they all have that. But yeah, 2 definitely did a lot of focus on character building, a lot of focus on kind of doing support missions where they flesh out, like you get to know everybody's team and backstory, and you help them deal with their own personal quests. And there are a lot of choices to be made. Is
that why the story is bad then for 3, because it doesn't take those into account, or?
That's, partially, yeah. Like you said, it's like a Dirty Dozen thing, and in the third game, they just do nothing with the characters.
3 just tries to wrap everything up very, very neatly for most of its run, and then the ending takes that to an extent where people were angry because it just simply like it feels like and it just also it invalidates. It's almost like, do you remember everybody's seen Alien 3, right? You know how Alien 3 at the beginning kills all the characters that were like important to save in Aliens.
Okay.
Like that is a feeling that I got out of Mass Effect 3, where you spend all this time defending the Citadel and getting to know the people on the Citadel, and then there's like a lot of stuff where it just feels like things you did in the previous games are all for naught, and that really the ending just completely like, hey, all that world building, all the stuff that you love, gone.
It's like the Resident Evil film series. No, the previous movie doesn't matter to the current movie.
It's not quite. It does continue
come
things.
On.
Just I don't like the way that it wraps stuff up.
Really? Talk about doing a disservice. Using the Resident Evil film series for anything.
I more likened it to like Rise of Skywalker or Game of Thrones Season 8.
Oh, man. Now we're getting into some of that territory. Okay, so Mass Effect 3 is not going to be on our top 10. I'm sure there will be plenty of people that will probably argue with
you
there.
Because of the things I'm saying, I apologize. Direct all angry replies at my Twitter at Aperture Science.
Or just send them to Mark and he can give you smart ass remarks.
Yeah.
So, going from one shooter with RPG mechanics to another one that certainly has a story to tell, Spec Ops: The Line. When I think of, like, I don't think I've ever played a shooter that wanted to tell me this fantastic story and I didn't care at all. I mean, it has some really good combat and the enemies are pretty hard at times, but, like, I just wanted to keep going because the story was so damn good in that game.
Did you ever see Apocalypse Now? Because if not, you're in for a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Heart of Darkness, but it's a really good version of Heart of Darkness. It actually, the transplanting that to that setting works beautifully. And the couple, even though they're very subtle, the moral choices that they build into that slightly affect how the ending goes down. I also really appreciate it. It's a perfectly.
Some of those moral choices are really terrible that you have to make.
Oh yeah. It's a competent shooter with a great story. It did a lot of things that shooters weren't doing at the time, so I definitely think it deserves to be on the list.
I mean, I played it on PC, so this may be the reason. I just didn't like the shooting at all. And I played with a controller. I didn't play with my keyboard, and I was just like, eh.
I played it on Xbox 360, and it was fine.
A great version of that game.
Yeah, I never had a problem with it. Randy, have you ever played Spec Ops?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of the people that had it up really high. I like that I had no idea what this game was. Wes brought it over and says, you have to play this. And I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever. It's another Call of Duty clone. Just no big deal. But like you guys said, the story is so good. The moral choices like really tug at you. And there's a couple of moments in that game where I just put the controller down and go, I can't play this right now. Because it hits hard in some spots. It's really well put together, and I think went under the radar because everyone just saw it as another Medal of Honor, another Call of Duty, another whatever at this point. So it's a great game.
Yeah, and I mean, and also the way they did they used Dubai. I mean, they could have just done it a bunch of sand and everything. I mean, and the sand looked great in that game, but they also took you to different parts of that city and. I think for the time, for what it was on, I mean, that's pretty cool, too.
Yeah, and another great performance by Nolan North.
And Jake Busey, you can't forget him.
Yeah, so that one, do you think it is fine where it is, or should it go higher than... I mean, some of these games are pretty great, so...
It's tough to tell. 2012 is such a weird year, because it's... I mean, we just look at our list, and it's so story-driven compared to some of these other years that it becomes what story
do you like the most?
I don't know. I feel like there are games on here that are extremely systemically driven, like Faster and Light, and Hotline Miami, which I think should be a lot higher because it just, one of the most adrenaline-fueled things. Every encounter is.
Well, it started Devolver, right? Like Devolver became what it is because of Hotline Miami.
That game, I mean, it holds up. It's still as amazing as it was back then. I think it'll always be amazing. And it's like My Super Meat Boy in a way, where it's one of those where you want to get the perfect run through, a quick level, but like each corner, you're like, if I don't get this exactly right.
Well, but the story too, right? Like the twist.
The story's interesting.
Yeah,
but it's not really why I'm there.
I wouldn't say great, but it's interesting. Hotline Miami has a warm place in my heart because it's the game that broke Wes when we were doing the backlog busting podcast. He had to play that game and he hated it so much, and he just threw the biggest fit and just was like trying to get him to say a word on the podcast. It was hilarious. So
and then it was like a joke you keep going back to later.
Yeah, but it's also a great game.
The way you guys are talking about Hotline Miami, it's a shame they never made a good sequel.
Yeah, I didn't like
it. It wasn't bad. It was just...
No, it's bad.
I thought it was fine. It wasn't like...
When you're playing as that Vietnam guy, and he's in flashbacks, this is terrible.
There are some things I enjoyed in it, but I just don't think that the levels were as good. It just didn't feel as tight.
Right.
And,
no, definitely.
It crossed over into feeling unfair.
Yeah, they definitely took let's make it. The first one was hard. Let's make it harder, arbitrarily, and yeah.
It wasn't even like super hard all the way through. It's just it had crazy spikes,
All right. I mean, yeah, you're saying Hotline Miami needs to be higher. You mentioned FTL, and I think also FTL is talk about a strategy game that still stands today is a fantastic game by itself. It's another game that gets ported to everything. I mean, not only because of its graphics make it easy to port, but it's a fantastic game that.
Yeah, I know people who are still playing it.
Yeah,
play like practically nothing else.
I'm not one that turns on to every strategy game that gets put out, but so many people talked about FTL that I was just like, oh, let me try it out, and I was like, oh damn, this is good. I mean, it gets freaking hard, just like XCOM does. That's also on this list, but it's it's freaking great. And I'll say one thing. I think this list might be. We were arguing more about getting a couple games on the list for 2011. This is more about, well, do we move something? What do we do? Because there's so much good here. This is also the last year before the PS4 and Xbox One, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there you go. Well, maybe we'll get a 2020 repeat.
No, 2013 is... Because didn't they come out 2014?
Oh, right, yeah. Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, still, you had everything. So, Mark, I know you're an XCOM person.
That should be number one.
No. Journey number one.
Walking Dead, well, you can have that argument, but Walking Dead should not be number one.
I agree with that.
That game had way too many technical fuck-up problems.
Okay, right. The engine was bad, but the story it tells is really good. I mean, great
in
even.
Parts, except when you get to episode 5. And it's like, oh, the guy that Clementine's talking to is just some dude you never met before, and it's like some total Deus Ex Machina.
The thing with Walking Dead, as much as I liked it, to me it marks the beginning of the end for Telltale. For the Telltale games I loved, because... I was a Telltale fan when they were doing Sam Max and Bone and Back to the Future and all that stuff. Monkey Island.
Jurassic Park.
Well, Jurassic Park was kind of the when you saw oh no, you're going in a really bad direction here, and they made that good. All the stuff that didn't work in Jurassic Park worked in Walking Dead. They figured out how to make a good game out of those systems, but they abandoned. Other than they made a couple of iOS games, Puzzle Agent and Hector, I guess, or maybe they just published.
I wouldn't say it's the beginning of the end because Wolf Among Us is just as good.
Well, but it's the beginning of the end for them making real adventure games.
It's the beginning. It's like the last of their old traditional stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough there.
So if you like that, but then it also became so formulaic where they would just, what IPs can we shove into this formula? Which of course doesn't, I mean, it...
Yeah, some of them worked and some of them didn't, and some of them they obviously got lazy too.
It's just, I think sometimes success ruins you, and I think that's what happened with Telltale and Walking Dead a bit.
Well, obviously, there was
turned into a workhorse thing where
well.
they're just cranking these things out on this formula, and I'm kind of bitter about it in retrospect. Though at the time I really liked it, but I also don't think it's a good enough game to be number one. I think it's a great story, and I think the choices are good. All the choose your own adventure stuff, and it's really good.
Oh, be careful! You can't say that. Those people will come in and sue us. I'm joking, but. They might. They're crazy about that. But, the choose your own story thing is I mean, it's probably this and Wolf Among Us are probably the climax of when I think about Telltale, and obviously it helps a lot that Walking Dead the show was still
somewhat decent
at its height when this game came out, and even though it fringely had some of those characters involved, it had like 2 that were in the show, and still the like attachment between Clementine and I don't know why I can't remember the Lee is fantastic all throughout, and then when you get to that ending, I cried because I was very attached to to Lee and everything, and like so it hit for me. So yeah, it's I know not for I mean this was the debate. I remember 2012 very clearly. I was doing this for 4-1. I was doing the Game of the Year stuff, and it was a battle of whether, and everybody was having this debate, really, of can you say Walking Dead should be able to be called Game of the Year? Because is it a game, even?
It's a game.
Of course it's a game.
Yeah.
But it's not Game of the Year.
I mean, I put Erica on my list for 2019.
Right, okay, but remember back then, this is like, people were saying, well, should these games count as games because you're just pressing buttons, and
this is like when people were saying that Dear Esther shouldn't be on Best of the Year list,
or Firewatch,
the whole like Walking Simulator backlash, or the backlash against Gone Home, and this whole thing of like, is this a game or not? I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I agree.
That's the argument.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. That it's a fantastic game. It was a great story. My issue with some of these, and The Walking Dead definitely falls in it too, where they're like, oh, you have so many choices to make, and here after the end of every episode we'll show you the 5 big ones that you made and what your percentages were. In the end you have 2 choices, and it's always the same, so it always funnels back to the same. It's why
it's true. When you play it, you realize that it doesn't. It's not as varied as you think.
It was fantastic as it was. And it's the reason why I kind of have soured on these games, like the Walking Dead games. Life is Strange was the one that completely soured me on all of these. Is because you have all these big things, and at the end it's 2 choices. And no matter what you've done, it always just comes back to these 2 choices. So nothing else mattered to this whole rest of the game. And things mattered, of course, in The Walking Dead. But in the end, you still end up with the exact same 2 choices. And I can't even imagine how tough it is to make these kind of games with all of the choices throughout, but for them always to end up in the same spot, it's a little down. But I agree, it definitely deserves to be in the top 10, more probably in the middle portion of it, but I agree with them. I don't think it's one.
Well, yeah, I mean, the game it's battling out with, Journey, is also one that it was an absolute marvel with every freaking gaming outlet that I ever saw back then. But then you would have the people that were like, oh, is this even a game? All you do is walk around.
Well, what does it matter what other people say?
Who
cares?
No, I'm just saying, I was like, that's the thing, is both of these games have that problem of, well, can you say this is... And, like, it's cool that Journey has gone beyond that, right? And keeps getting ported to things, and like, I remember I didn't play it back then, I played it later, so I didn't get to experience the whole multiplayer with the scarves and all that, but, like, that 2 hours that I spent with it was, like, emotional. It, like, catches you as it's story that it's trying to tell. If it hooks you, it hooks you really well, and that's what I appreciated about it.
Yeah, that multiplayer layer and Journey, how that worked, it's kind of like the 2012 equivalent of what Death Stranding is doing with the multiplayer or something, where it's just, we've never seen multiplayer work this way. And man, it ties into the thematics of the game in just such a beautiful way.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's, I think what I had is my number one, Journey. Yes. So, or no, it might have been, I might have had Walking Dead right below it, but I think definitely Journey. I mean, I know Mark said XCOM, which I'm not arguing that XCOM is not
it's great.
Important. I mean, XCOM's great. The thing with XCOM, I think about is that, yes, I know Fire Emblem was sort of around and doing, permadeath and all that stuff, but, like, XCOM kind of brought the strategy game into, like, mainstream a little bit, because XCOM came out and then it was in this sort of realistic setting, so I think it turned on more people than, say, a Fire Emblem would, where you have the fantasy setting or whatever. And
XCOM wasn't popular because of Smash Brothers, so that helps.
well, yeah, okay, whatever. But
it's more that I think XCOM as a series had fallen greatly out of favor. The last couple of XCOM games, like Apocalypse, wasn't good.
And this came to consoles, which helps a lot.
Yeah, it just seemed like a risky thing of like, oh, they're making another XCOM. Like, can they really do justice to the original? Like, there's more bad XCOM games than good. Does anybody want an XCOM in 2012? So just the fact that they made it and they pulled it off, it's not perfect. It's not. I don't think it's as good as the original Enemy Unknown or UFO Defense, depending on which region you're in. But man, it's a great XCOM game, and I love that it revitalized the series.
It's such a shame that XCOM 2 fucked it all up again.
Well, and then also, like, you could name the characters, so, like, if you named them, people that you knew when they died, it was like, oh shit, I just lost my friend. Like,
That's what me and a buddy did. We both had our own XCOM games going, and then we just messaged each other and said, you screwed up that mission. Your characters messed everything up.
Yeah.
You let Jimmy die, damn it.
So, obviously, you could save scum it, so that helped, but it was still, for its time, I think XCOM was huge.
Save scum it all that well because it did all the calculations at the beginning, like all the dice rolls.
Right.
Yeah, Fire Emblem is that way also, which
yes.
I don't really like.
So, like, unless you significantly switch up your tactics, you're always going to end up with the same results.
All right. So I think the only games we haven't talked about is Far Cry 3. Mark, tell me why Far Cry 3 is.
I still think it's probably the best Far Cry game personally, because it had a great plot, good mechanic. I think Far Cry 4 might have better gameplay mechanic, but the story's dumber. The only bad thing about Far Cry 3 personally is how they fuck up Voss's character like halfway through.
Yeah, they set up this great villain, and then they just dispose of him and bring in a lamer villain.
They bring in the evil German, like all.
Sorry, Jens.
I don't like the story very much, but from a gameplay standpoint, it did pretty much everything right. Like, the stealth is great, the shooting was great. Taking over the bases was very addictive, more addictive actually than doing the story missions.
Yeah.
Weapons feel really good. I can't argue with it being... it's the template, right? It's what every Far Cry game has aspired to and failed to be since. Other than 4, I think 4 comes pretty close.
Yeah, 4 is, like, the closest. I think 4 has, like, some like, weird problems with, like, the story. Like, the brother and sister pair are just, like, lame. But other than that, like, I think Far Cry 3 is, like, the best one, kind of by far. Except for Blood Dragon, you guys.
Except for Far Cry 2.
Except for New Dawn.
But, guys, I don't know what you're talking about. Far Cry 4 was only like 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wasn't the only one that just sat there and listened to him and said, sure, I'll wait.
Yeah, seems like a reasonable guy. Charming.
Yeah, right? It seems like it makes sense.
Yeah. And then the credits rolled and I turned it off. What are you guys talking about?
So, what makes Persona 4 Golden special compared to the other Persona 4, the original?
That's on you. I haven't played it. I have it, but I haven't delved into it.
What?
Persona 4 Golden. Why does it?
I just got my Vita last year.
I'm just shocked. Okay. So you got the Vita TV, right? So you're gonna play it on a.
Well, both. I got my Vita like 2 years ago, and then I got Golden, and that was about it. And I had a huge problem actually getting the game to run on my Vita.
I find it hard to compare because I didn't really play Persona 4 before playing Persona Golden.
Like from what I understand, it's a slightly different art style. Like it's like a lot, like it's not it's pared down compared to the full like the PS2 version, but the network stuff is great. Same battle system, same story.
Well, and Marie adds a lot.
Yeah. I know that the Golden Week stuff is new. I know that there is like a lot of post-Akechi story stuff that they added.
Yeah, exactly. You can do stuff with Akechi, which that also changed.
Everyone wants to hang out with the creepy raper guy.
Well,
but it was cool. You could do his story though. You know, you could understand that perspective more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As I said, I don't know enough about how it differentiates. If we're just taking it as like, does it differentiate itself over Persona 4? Then I don't know. But I can only say that as a standalone game, it's great. It's the reason to own your Vita.
Yeah, it's still the best Vita game.
I mean, there are some good Vita games. I mean, the Trails from the Sky I played on Vita.
Yeah.
Trails of Cold Steel. So they're great. There are other great RPGs. There are plenty of great RPGs on Vita, but Persona 4 Golden alone kind of justified a Vita. So, and that was my favorite system. I think I just
you could play the Uncharted game on it too. You know.
I didn't like the Vita Uncharted game.
No one did.
It was very gimmicky.
I did. I mean, other than the gimmicks, which were definitely forced by Sony because it was a launch title game. But if you just look past the forced gimmicks, the story was fine. The gameplay on a handheld was good. Like, I still think it's one of the lower Uncharted games for sure. But I just wish it would have came out like a year or two later, so it wasn't forced with like the back touchpad and stuff. But
yeah, I just think Persona 4 is an amazing game, and this is the way to get it on a list of ours.
It was, yeah. I definitely think you could put it lower, though. It doesn't necessarily have to be at 3.
That's true. I think it just depends on how you feel about, what Golden does to it.
Which I love Marnie as a character, so I would say that I would drop it a little bit, but...
All right, so what are we putting at 1?
Journey. Unless Marc is going to fight for XCOM that much.
Well, XCOM can be 2, but I just... Walking Dead, no.
I agree. I
think put Walking Dead at like 3 or something.
Honestly, I think XCOM, Spec Ops, Hotline Miami can all go above Walking Dead. I'm not a Persona guy, so I don't know what you guys think if Persona should be above it too. I don't play that series, so I have no idea. But those 3, I think, should all be above Walking Dead.
And I obviously like it a lot better, but I can understand the argument for having Walking Dead above Persona 4. But I agree that XCOM, Spec Ops, and Hotline Miami are all like, those are tops for me. Maybe even FTL. Like FTL, I think, is significant enough that it could be in the top 5.
Yeah. I would, leave it. That's fine. I think because still Walking Dead at least was new for its year.
Like I think if Walking Dead actually worked perfectly, then it would, I wouldn't have a problem if it would be number 1. But the fact that wiped my save on episode 4, so I had to replay 2 and 3 again. It's like, no, fuck you.
Oh yeah, that's super frustrating. I can totally understand.
The fact they never really fixed, those issues kept coming up over and over again in that series. And because they're using the same busted game engine over and over. And it's like, you guys should have maybe worked on this.
Yeah, but they couldn't work on the engine because they had to come out with 9 different games every year.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Then
it wasn't that. It was the guy that made the engine didn't want them to change the engine.
Yeah, because that was the only thing he knew, so if they went into something else, he would have been screwed.
Yeah, I mean, now it's funny because he's being forced to be one of the guys that's actually working on that new engine, which is ironic in its own, whatever, but back then he was one of the... Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I interrupted you, but as is my MO. Man, by the time that we got to, playing Game of Thrones Season 1...
on
PS4, and it was running like a bad, it looks and runs like a bad PS2 game on PS4.
Yeah.
Just like, what are you doing? What is happening?
The Batman games in particular were the egregious ones because those are supposed to be action-packed.
Yeah, you're doing action stuff.
And what the fuck's going on? Like, you're missing QTE prompts because, like, it's just not registering your actual movement of the joystick.
Yeah, you're doing action stuff, and it's exactly just slow. It's like 2, 3, 4 seconds slow than it's supposed to be, and you're having to do levels over and over again.
Hey, but at least the Telltale games have the same graphic ability as that new Fast and the Furious game that they showed on the Game Awards.
Oh, don't get me started.
I thought that was Wheelman 2 at first.
Well,
you couldn't be that lucky.
So, man,
I just feel Walking Dead ruined Telltale. That's.
I know what you mean, but like, there's still several of those that are actually good that come after it.
Yeah, but I understand where he's coming from. They definitely took on a more serious tone. I never really got into the Sam and Max stuff because I love
Sam and Max.
PC guy, but
and those are real adventure games with puzzles.
But I like we did
the
Back to the Future. We did Back to the Future on the backlog busting project, and Wes and I had a good time with it. It was very enjoyable and goofy and had some puzzles to it, and so I totally get what you're saying.
It was getting lighter at that point. They were like slowly scaling the puzzles down, working their way towards what became their formula. Anyway, I'm repeating myself.
I mean, I'm a person that loves Xenoblade Chronicles, so I would obviously want it higher, but I mean,
if you got on the list, you should be happy with that.
Oh no, it's I mean, the story is great. I love the characters. Shulk is underrated. I mean, I think obviously it sets the template for the other two that come after it, but it's like just. I love that world that you go into, and at any moment you can run into anything, literally, and just man. And this is something that, I didn't play it. I played it on the 3DS later, but it was the reason I bought my new 3DS, and I love the crap out of it, and it's such a fantastic game, and so I don't know. I guess I'll leave it there so we don't have to.
And I know that you guys probably brought it up when my computer was taking a crap over itself, but I just wanted to give it a shout out. I didn't even put it on my list. I know, Sean, you put it on yours, but that Dust Elysian Tale, it was a very surprisingly good game. And if nobody's played it, you should give that one a shot. But
yeah, you can probably get it really cheap right now because
we talked about it.
Yeah, I played it. I just didn't like the map in that game. That's the biggest problem for me. I'm like, this is like this weird, vague notion of a map.
I just remember going through it. I don't remember really paying attention to the map.
No, Metroidvania is like a grid.
Yeah.
It's literally based on grid paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
Just didn't have that. And it's like, this is weird.
It was still good. I just wanted to say, I figured you guys had talked about it before when I was waiting for my computer to restart itself. But
okay, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so literally Sean went, okay, let's go, and I got a blue screen. It was fantastically good timing.
Well, I think that's going to be the 10 then, unless somebody wants to make a bigger case for Sleeping Dogs, but
it was good.
I would love Sleeping Dogs on here, but I don't see how it quite hangs.
Yeah, I'm fine with Forza Horizon being 10. I mean, I never played it, but I know it's got a huge following, so I'm cool.
Well, it's not just that. It's like I said it when we talked about it originally, because Marc wanted it to be in the list, was thinking about the time when this game came out, there wasn't a lot of arcade racers, and then to take the sim-based racer and decide, oh, we're not only going to do that, we're now going to kick ass at the arcade racing. And now nobody else seems to be... The thing is, what's funny is that nobody else really seems to be able to do it after Forza Horizon now comes out. Like, the crew sucks. So, like, what else is really out there? Rockstar stopped making the Midnight Club games, so, like, what else is out there that's really competing with Forza Horizon, and this is the first one? So,
Team Racing.
Wreckfest.
I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah, well, Wreckfest is... But that's more of, like, Burnout, isn't it?
No, it's Arcade Racer.
Oh, okay.
There's no turbo meter or anything. You're just racing on, like, lawnmowers and shit like that.
It's fun.
All right, well, there you go. So, our top 10 for 2012. Journey is our quote-unquote game of the year. XCOM, Enemy Unknown right after it at number 2. Spec Ops: The Line at 3. Hotline Miami 4. Walking Dead, Telltale's Walking Dead Season 1 at number 5. Persona 4 Golden at 6. Far Cry 3 at 7. FTL Faster Than Light at 8. Xenoblade Chronicles at 9. And Forza Horizon at 10. So, that's 2012. And hopefully you stick around and keep listening. I think the idea is to do 2013 and some others on Friday or Saturday. So we'll have those for you sometime over the weekend. And you can go back and listen to 2010 and 2011 as well. And if you have any complaints or you just want to praise our lists, you can hit us up on Twitter at WTimSean for me, at Randy Isbelle for Randy, at Aperture Silence for Jens, and at Humanity Playing for Marc. And if you like what you heard, we do a regular show. Should be out there along with these. That Marc and I are going to be discussing our most anticipated games of 2020. And then, you can hit subscribe. So you can, anytime we do a show, it's there. Because we're going to be doing a lot in a quick set of time here. And you can always review on any platform that you like to listen to us on. Because we're pretty much out there on everything. Spotify, iHeartRadio, which apparently is like number one, now is above iTunes, number one app for podcasting. On iTunes, on Stitcher, on whatever. Thank you to the last
Donner,
word.
on Blitzen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done, yes.
So, thank you to Last Word Online for having us on there as well. And we'll see you guys on the next one.